Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Wisdom channel. Tonight, we'll be exploring karma, one of the most popular yet misunderstood ideas in history. Many people think it simply means payback, but the older teachings are far deeper. Karma asks us to look at actions, intentions, and consequences with compassionate honesty, because it suggests that nothing we do is ever completely separate from what we become. This is not only a belief about what may happen after death, it is also a way of understanding how a life slowly takes shape. Every choice leaves a mark, and every motive trains the mind in a particular direction. Even a small habit, repeated often enough, can become part of a person's future. Across ancient wisdom traditions, karma became a way to explain why human freedom and human responsibility belong together. It shows why the unseen part of an action may matter more than the visible result, and why the smallest decision can carry more meaning than we first imagine. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is get settled in. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breathing slow. And allow your mind to settle into stillness as we explore the strange and powerful teachings of karma together. Let's begin. Karma originally meant action before it came to mean moral destiny. That is the first surprising door into the subject, because the word did not begin as a cosmic reward system. In early Indian thought, it was closely tied to doing, making, performing, and participating in the order of life. A person acted, and that action mattered. Later, the idea widened into something much larger. It began to suggest that actions do not simply vanish when the moment ends. They may leave a kind of trace. They may shape a future condition. They may even follow a person beyond a single lifetime. This is where karma becomes fascinating, because it turns ordinary behavior into something with hidden depth. A spoken promise, a selfish choice, a generous deed, or a secret intention could all be part of a larger pattern. Some people imagine this almost like an invisible record of movement. Not a judge in the sky, but a deep law of consequence that remembers what has been set in motion. Karma teaches that choices shape life more than random events. At the heart of the teaching is a bold idea. Your life is not just something that happens to you. It is also something you help create through repeated decisions. This does not mean every event is your fault. Wise traditions are careful about that. But karma insists that human choices have power, even when the world feels chaotic. The food we reach for, the words we use, the anger we feed, and the kindness we practice all begin to form a direction. Over time, that direction can feel like destiny. This is why karma can sound almost like ancient psychology. It says that the future is built quietly through patterns. A person who acts with courage becomes more capable of courage. A person who lives through resentment becomes trained by resentment. Some people take this even further and wonder whether reality itself responds to moral movement, as though conduct sends signals into a deeper field of consequence. In Hindu thought, karma can follow the soul through many lives. This is one of the most powerful ideas in the tradition, because it stretches consequence far beyond a single human lifetime. The soul, often called Atman in many Hindu schools, is not treated as a temporary accident. It is seen as something that journeys through repeated births. Karma becomes the force that helps explain why that journey continues and why one life may connect to another. A person may be born into conditions that are difficult to understand from the outside. Karma offers a long view, where the story did not begin at birth and may not end at death. This can be comforting, unsettling, and deeply mysterious all at once. It suggests that moral life is larger than memory. You may not remember earlier actions, yet their effects may still be working through the path ahead. Some people see this as a spiritual account of continuity, where the soul carries unfinished lessons until liberation becomes possible. The Buddha taught that intention matters more than outward ritual. This shift changed the whole meaning of karma in a remarkable way. The Buddha did not place the greatest weight on ceremony, social status, or religious performance. He placed it on the movement of the mind. If an action grows from greed, hatred, or confusion, it carries one kind of consequence. If it grows from generosity, compassion, or clarity, it carries another. That makes karma more intimate than people often imagine. It is not only about what others can see. It is about what is happening before the hand moves or the mouth speaks. A gift given to impress people is not the same as a gift given with sincere care. A silence kept out of wisdom is not the same as a silence kept out of fear. This is why the teaching can feel almost forensic. It examines the hidden beginning of action. The real event starts inside, where intention gives moral direction to behavior. Private motives matter because they slowly train the mind. The motive may be invisible to everyone else, yet it can still shape the person who carries it. This is one of karma's most unsettling insights. It says that the mind is not neutral ground. Every intention leaves practice behind. If someone helps only to be praised, the mind learns to crave recognition. If someone speaks truth, even when it costs something, the mind learns steadiness. The outer world may applaud both people, but karma looks beneath the surface. That is what makes the idea so compelling for self-improvement. It does not let us hide behind appearances. A life can look successful while the inner training is full of fear, hunger, or vanity. Some people describe this as the secret curriculum of existence. We are always being educated by our own motives. The question is not only, what did I do? The deeper question is, what did that action teach my mind to become? Ancient India saw karma as a law built into existence. The idea was not treated as a casual saying or a comforting slogan. It became part of a larger vision of reality, where action and consequence were woven into the structure of the world. In this view, moral life was not separate from the order of existence. It belonged to it. This is where karma becomes almost cosmic. Just as fire burns and seeds grow according to their nature, actions were believed to carry results according to their quality. A harmful act did not need a human witness to matter. A hidden good deed did not become meaningless because nobody praised it. The universe itself was imagined as morally responsive. That is a stunning claim. Some people hear it and think of a vast unseen system, more subtle than law and more patient than human judgment. It suggests that reality may be keeping account in ways no court, ruler, or witness could ever fully measure. Repeated actions slowly shape the kind of person we become. This is where karma becomes practical enough to feel immediate. You do not need to believe in distant lifetimes to see that repetition changes a person. Say one dishonest thing, and it may feel like a single escape. Repeat it often, and the mind becomes comfortable with distortion. Practice patience in a small moment, and it may feel minor. Practice it again and again, and it becomes a strength available under pressure. Ancient teachings understood this long before modern habit science gave it new language. Karma points to the same living truth. We are not only punished or rewarded by actions, we are formed by them. Each choice is a small vote for the person we are becoming. Some people see this as the everyday doorway into destiny. Not a lightning strike from the heavens, but a slow construction of character. The frightening part is how quietly it happens. The hopeful part is that it can change. Jain teachers described karma as matter attached to the soul. This is one of the most unusual and fascinating versions of the idea. In Jain thought, karma is not only a moral consequence in an abstract sense. It can be described as a kind of subtle material that binds to the soul through action, passion, and ignorance. That makes the spiritual problem almost physical in its logic. The soul is naturally pure, but it becomes weighed down. Anger, violence, greed, and careless living attract more bondage. Discipline, restraint, and non-violence help reduce it. This is why Jain practice can look so exacting to outsiders. Every movement matters, because every movement may have a consequence. Even tiny forms of life are treated with seriousness. Some people find this vision astonishing because it imagines morality as something that leaves residue. The soul is not merely guilty or innocent. It is covered, burdened, and waiting to be cleared through careful living. Buddhist karma works without needing a permanent soul. This is one of the strangest and most important differences between traditions. Buddhism often rejects the idea of an unchanging self, yet it still teaches continuity across action and result. That sounds like a puzzle at first. If there is no permanent soul, what receives the karma? The answer is not simple, but it is deeply intriguing. Buddhism looks at life as a stream of causes and conditions. One moment influences the next. One pattern gives rise to another. The person you are today is not exactly the same as the child you once were, but there is still connection. Karma moves through that connection. It is less like a solid object being passed along and more like a flame lighting another flame. Some people find this more mysterious than the idea of a soul. It suggests that identity itself may be a process, and that moral consequence can travel through change without needing a fixed owner. Modern ideas of karma are often simpler than ancient teachings. Today, people often use the word when someone gets what they deserve. A rude person has a bad day, and people say it was karma. A selfish act backfires, and the word appears again. That version is easy to understand, but it is much thinner than the older traditions. Ancient karma was not always instant. It was not always obvious. It did not always look like a neat moral lesson. It could involve intention, habit, rebirth, liberation, ritual, discipline, and the unseen movement of the mind. This makes the original idea far more complex than social media usually allows. It was not a punchline. It was a complete way of thinking about existence. Some people are drawn to the older view because it feels less like quick revenge and more like a hidden architecture of consequence. The deeper teaching asks us to stop watching other people's downfall and start examining what our own actions are building. The Sanskrit word karma means action or deed. That simple meaning changes the whole subject. Before karma became a word people used for payback, it meant something much more direct. It referred to doing. It pointed toward the act itself. This matters because it brings the teaching back to everyday life. Karma is not only about dramatic events, tragic reversals, or mysterious justice. It begins when a person chooses, speaks, helps, harms, refuses, reaches, avoids, or commits. The old word reminds us that spirituality is not limited to belief. It is enacted. It happens through behavior. A person's philosophy may sound beautiful, but karma asks what that person actually does. This is why the idea can cut through appearances so sharply. It measures life in movement rather than opinion. Some people see this as the genius of the teaching. It refuses to let wisdom remain theoretical. the question becomes immediate. What action is being taken, and what kind of future might it already be setting in motion? Many traditions say karma is not punishment from a judge. This is one of the biggest misunderstandings. Karma is often imagined as if some invisible authority is watching, recording, and waiting to strike. But many teachings describe it differently. They present karma as consequence rather than punishment. A seed does not grow because it is being rewarded. Fire does not burn because it is angry. In the same way, an action brings effects because causes unfold. That makes karma less like a courtroom and more like a moral ecology. The result may still be serious, but the mechanism is not always pictured as personal judgment. This distinction matters because it changes the emotional tone of the teaching. It is not necessarily about fear. It is about understanding how life responds to what is planted into it. Some people find this more powerful than divine punishment because it suggests that reality does not need to be offended in order to answer. It simply unfolds what has been set in motion. Intention can change the moral meaning of the same action. Imagine two people giving money to someone in need. One gives because they care. Another gives only so witnesses will admire them. The outer act looks similar, but the inner reality is different. Karma takes that difference seriously. This is why the teaching has always been more subtle than simple rule-keeping. It asks what force is moving beneath the action. Fear, pride, compassion, duty, and greed can all wear the same outward costume. A sharp word may be cruel in one situation and protective in another. A refusal may be selfish, or it may be wise. This makes karma demanding because it does not let us judge life only by appearances. It asks us to investigate the motive. Some people compare this to a hidden signature inside every deed. The visible action is only the surface. The intention gives it direction, weight, and meaning. That is why self-honesty becomes a spiritual necessity. The Bhagavad Gita teaches duty above personal reward. This teaching arrives in one of the most dramatic settings in spiritual literature. Arjuna stands on a battlefield, overwhelmed by the moral weight of action. He does not want to move forward, yet avoiding action also carries consequences. Krishna's guidance turns the moment into a profound lesson about karma. A person must act, but action should not be controlled by hunger for reward. This does not mean results are meaningless. It means the mind becomes trapped when it depends on success, praise, victory, or recognition. Duty becomes a way of acting from a deeper center. The teaching is powerful because it speaks directly to ordinary life. People face choices where every option has weight. They must work, decide, protect, serve, and sometimes endure misunderstanding. Some people see the Gita as a manual for action under pressure. It says that freedom is not found by escaping responsibility. It is found by doing what is right without becoming owned by the outcome. Karma shows that inner life and outer action are connected. The teaching refuses to separate what happens inside a person from what happens through their behavior. A thought may become a word may become a pattern may become a life. This is why karma can feel so modern, even though it comes from ancient traditions. It recognizes that the private world and the public world constantly influence each other. Someone who feeds envy may eventually speak with bitterness. Someone who practices compassion may notice opportunities to help that others overlook. The invisible life does not stay invisible forever. It leaks into tone, posture, timing, judgment, and choice. Some people are fascinated by this because it suggests that reality is shaped from the inside outward more often than we realize. Karma asks us to look before the action appears. It asks, what is being rehearsed in the mind? That rehearsal may become the script a person follows when the important moment arrives. Some teachings say even thoughts can create karmic effects. This idea can feel startling because it expands responsibility beyond visible behavior. A person may believe they have done nothing because they stayed silent and still. Yet certain traditions ask what was happening in the mind during that stillness. Was there envy being fed? Was there compassion being strengthened? Was there resentment being rehearsed until it felt justified? The point is not to make people afraid of every passing thought. A stray mental event is not the same as a chosen habit of attention. The deeper warning is about what we keep returning to. Repeated thought can train emotion. Trained emotion can shape action. Shaped action can alter a life. Some people find this almost unsettlingly advanced. It suggests that the future may begin before anyone can see it. Not in some magical spectacle, but in the private workshop of attention. Karma, in this sense, begins where the mind quietly decides what to practice. The Upanishads linked karma with rebirth and spiritual freedom. These ancient texts helped shift the focus from outer ritual toward a deeper inquiry into the self. They asked what survives change, what binds a being to repeated existence, and what might finally release it. Karma became part of that great investigation. Actions were not only events in the world. They were connected to the journey of the soul and the possibility of liberation. This gave moral life enormous importance. A person was not merely trying to have a better day or a better reputation. They were participating in a vast process of becoming. The Upanishadic vision asks whether there is something in us that is deeper than personality, memory, and status. It also asks why that deeper reality seems trapped in ordinary desire and confusion. Some people are drawn to this because it makes human life feel like a mystery school. Every action, every attachment, and every awakening becomes part of the long search for freedom. Good karma does not always return in obvious ways. This teaching is important because it protects karma from becoming childish. People often expect goodness to produce immediate comfort, but older traditions are usually more patient. A generous person may still face difficulty. A dishonest person may seem to prosper. If karma were always instant and visible, life would look simpler than it does. The deeper idea is that consequences may unfold beneath the surface. A good action might strengthen character, open trust, reduce fear, or prepare the mind for wisdom. Those results are real even when they do not look like a public reward. Some people imagine karma as a long process rather than a quick transaction. The value of goodness is not only in what comes back from the world, it is also in what happens within the person who chooses it. This makes the teaching more challenging. It asks us to act well without demanding immediate proof. The return may be inward, delayed, or hidden from view. Bad karma may first appear as confusion before suffering. The first consequence of a harmful action is not always pain. Sometimes it is distortion. The person does something selfish, then must invent a story to defend it. They may blame others, deny what happened, or convince themselves that cruelty was necessary. This is why karma becomes psychologically fascinating. The mind begins to bend around the act. It protects the ego by weakening honesty. Over time, that confusion can become a prison. The person may still function, succeed, and even appear confident, yet their inner compass has been damaged. Some traditions see this as an early karmic result. Suffering arrives later, but blindness begins first. This explains why wisdom teachings pay so much attention to clarity. A confused mind repeats the same harm because it cannot see the pattern. Some people find this more frightening than punishment. The first cost of wrongdoing may be losing the ability to recognize what one is becoming. Ancient teachers used karma to explain moral cause and effect. Before modern courts, psychology, or social theory, karma offered a way to think about why conduct matters beyond immediate reward. It told people that actions are not isolated sparks. They belong to chains of consequence. A betrayal may damage trust for years. A single act of courage may inspire choices no one can trace back to the original moment. A selfish habit may create a world where others learn to defend themselves. The teaching gave moral life a structure. It suggested that unseen effects can be as real as visible ones. This is why karma became such a durable idea. It answered a question every culture faces. Does it matter what we do when no one is watching? Karma says yes, because action enters a web of causes. Some people take this in a mystical direction. Others see it as ancient common sense. Either way, the teaching gives weight to every decision without needing constant human supervision. Liberation means freedom from the whole cycle of karma. In many Indian traditions, the highest aim is not simply getting better circumstances next time. It is escaping the machinery of repeated consequence altogether. This is why liberation is such a radical idea. It does not ask for a more comfortable prison. It asks whether the door can be opened. Karma keeps beings moving through birth, death, desire, action, and result. Liberation means the chain no longer controls the deepest self. Different traditions explain this in different ways, but the direction is similar. The person stops being dragged by craving, fear, ignorance, and compulsion. They no longer act as if every passing desire deserves obedience. To a modern listener, this can sound like the ultimate spiritual jailbreak. The system has been running for ages, perhaps across lifetimes, and the awakened person finally sees how it operates. Once that seeing becomes complete, the old engine loses power. Freedom is not a reward added to life. It is release from bondage. A kind action can still create attachment when done for praise. This is one of karma's most uncomfortable insights, because it looks beyond the good appearance of a deed. A person may feed the hungry, help a stranger, or speak beautifully in public, yet still be secretly bargaining for admiration. The action may benefit someone, but the mind behind it can become more dependent on approval. That is why certain traditions treat attachment as a hidden danger. The problem is not kindness. The problem is clinging to identity through kindness. The person begins to need witnesses. They begin to measure their goodness by applause. Soon, virtue becomes another way for the ego to survive. This is a sharp teaching for the modern world, where good deeds can be displayed instantly. Karma asks what happens inside the giver after the deed is done. Does the heart become freer, or does it wait for a reward? The same helpful action can train humility, or it can train hunger. Some Hindu schools say karma needs divine order to work. In these views, karma is not a loose force floating through the universe by itself. It operates within a sacred order sustained by the divine. This matters because it answers a difficult question. If actions create consequences, what ensures that those consequences appear in the right way? Some teachers place that intelligence in Ishvara, the Lord, who governs the moral structure of existence. Karma still belongs to the person who acts, but the unfolding of results is held within a larger wisdom. This gives the teaching a different emotional shape. It is not only a mechanical law, it is moral reality under divine supervision. For people drawn to hidden systems, this is a fascinating idea. The universe is not random, and it is not merely physical. It has a moral architecture. and that architecture may be guided by a consciousness beyond ordinary perception. In this view, every action enters an order deeper than human calculation. Other Indian philosophers say, karma works without a personal God. This version is just as intriguing because it imagines moral consequence as part of reality itself. No heavenly judge is required. No divine administrator needs to decide every outcome. Action carries results because the world is structured that way. For some thinkers, karma functioned almost like an impersonal law. It did not need anger, favor, mercy, or personality. It simply unfolded according to causes. That makes the idea feel strangely close to natural law, except that it reaches into ethics and consciousness. A deed as a force. An intention shapes that force. The result appears when conditions allow it. Some people find this more unsettling than divine judgment because there is nobody to persuade. There is no cosmic official to flatter. The law is quiet, patient, and unavoidable. In this vision, existence itself has moral memory. Not because someone is keeping score, but because action and result are inseparable. The Buddha rejected fatalism, but kept moral consequence. This is a crucial point because karma is often misunderstood as a doctrine that says everything is already decided. The Buddha pushed against that kind of thinking. He taught that past action matters, but the present moment still has power. A person is not trapped forever by what came before. They can notice craving. They can stop feeding anger. They can choose a wiser response. That makes karma dynamic rather than frozen. The past creates conditions, but it does not erase responsibility now. This is why Buddhist practice places so much emphasis on attention. The chain can be interrupted when it is seen clearly. A reaction that once felt automatic can become a choice. That idea is electrifying when you really hear it. Karma is not a closed sentence handed down from the past. It is a moving process. The next link is being formed right now, and awareness can change what happens next. Karma teaches that freedom still exists within difficult conditions. This teaching does not pretend that everyone begins from the same place. People inherit bodies, families, cultures, wombs, advantages, and limitations they did not personally choose. Karma becomes powerful because it does not require perfect circumstances before responsibility becomes meaningful. It says that even within pressure, there remains a space where response can change direction. That space may be small, but it matters. A person cannot always control what arrives, yet they can slowly train how they meet it. This is where karma becomes a serious teaching rather than a comforting slogan. It respects the weight of conditions, but it refuses to surrender human agency. Some people see this as one of the most empowering ideas in ancient wisdom. You may not control the whole board, but your next move is still real. Over time, repeated responses create a new pattern. The teaching begins in constraint, yet it points toward freedom through deliberate action. One careless habit can become a future chain. At first, a habit can look harmless. It may be a small evasion, a lazy excuse, a repeated complaint, or a private indulgence nobody sees. Karma asks us to take such things seriously because repetition gives them power. What begins as an exception can become a tendency. What becomes a tendency can become identity. Soon the person says, "This is just how I am." That is the moment the chain has tightened. The strange thing is that many karmic bonds do not feel dramatic while they are forming. They feel familiar. They feel convenient. They feel like nothing worth examining. This is why ancient teachers cared so much about discipline. they understood that the future is often assembled through ordinary repetition. Some people compare this to invisible engineering. A person builds a cage, one small permission at a time. The hopeful side is just as important. A better habit can also become a future key. Generosity is powerful because it changes the giver first. The obvious effect of generosity is that someone receives help. The deeper effect is that the giver's inner world shifts. For a moment, the mind stops treating possession as the center of life. It loosens the fear that says there will never be enough. In many wisdom traditions, this is why giving is a spiritual practice rather than a social courtesy. It cuts directly into grasping. A person who gives wisely trains the nervous system of the soul to trust something beyond hoarding. That can be transformative. The object given may be small, but the movement inside can be enormous. Some people treat generosity almost like a hidden technology of freedom. It changes the relationship between self and world. It says, I am not only a creature of appetite. I can participate in another person's good. This is why the karmic force of giving is not measured only by size. It is measured by release. In Jainism, non-violence protects the soul from karmic burden. Jain practice takes non-violence to a degree that can astonish outsiders. The concern is not only with avoiding obvious harm. It reaches into speech, movement, diet, livelihood, and attention. The reason is karmic. Violence is thought to attract bondage to the soul, while careful restraint helps prevent further burden. This gives everyday conduct an extraordinary seriousness. To live is to move through a world full of other living beings, many of them small and easily overlooked. Jain teachers asked what it would mean to treat that fact as spiritually important. The result is one of the most demanding moral visions ever developed. It challenges the casual assumption that only human comfort matters. Some people find this radical because it makes ethics microscopic. The smallest life becomes part of the moral field. The soul is protected not through domination, but through restraint. Power is measured by how little harm one is willing to cause. Karma makes ordinary moments feel spiritually important. The teaching has a way of changing the scale of daily life. It does not wait for temples, ceremonies, crises, or grand declarations. It enters the moment when someone chooses patience instead of irritation. It enters the tone used with a child, the honesty shown in private, and the restraint practiced when nobody can punish dishonesty. Ordinary life becomes the place where destiny is being shaped. This can make karma feel strangely thrilling. The kitchen, the workplace, the street, and the message typed late at night are not spiritually neutral. They are fields of action. Every small moment asks what kind of person is being trained. Some people are drawn to this because it removes the gap between sacred life and real life. You do not have to wait for a dramatic transformation. The material is already here. The next sentence you speak may be part of your practice. The next choice may already be shaping tomorrow. The Gita warns against becoming trapped by results. This warning feels sharper in a world obsessed with visible success. The teaching does not say results are irrelevant. It says the mind becomes enslaved when results become the master. The person may work with skill, courage, and discipline, yet still suffer because they are attached to applause or outcome. The Bhagavad Gita points to another way. Act fully, but do not let the result own your identity. That is a difficult teaching because people often confuse attachment with motivation. They fear that without craving, they will stop caring. The Gita suggests the opposite. A free person may act more clearly because fear of failure does not distort the work. Some people see this as an ancient antidote to performance culture. It asks whether excellence can exist without inner bondage. Imagine doing what must be done with complete seriousness, while refusing to make your worth depend on the result. That is not passivity. It is discipline. Acting without attachment does not mean acting without care. This distinction matters because detachment is easily misunderstood. Some hear it and imagine coldness, distance, or emotional withdrawal. But in the karmic traditions, non-attachment can mean caring deeply without trying to possess the outcome. A doctor can treat a patient with full dedication while accepting that healing cannot be forced. A parent can guide a child without believing control is love. A worker can serve with excellence without turning success into self-worship. This is a very practical wisdom. It separates sincerity from clinging. Attachment says the result must obey me before I can be at peace. Care says the action deserves my best, even when the result remains uncertain. Some people consider this one of the hardest spiritual skills because it asks for strength and softness at the same time. You remain involved, but not imprisoned. You act with heart, but you do not make reality sign a contract. Some karmic results are said to appear quickly. In many teachings, not every consequence waits for another lifetime. Certain actions seem to return almost immediately because the inner effect begins at once. A lie may create anxiety the moment it is spoken. An insult may poison the room before anyone replies. A selfish choice may bring quick isolation because trust can change in a single exchange. This kind of karma is easy to miss because people look for dramatic payback. The faster result may be psychological, relational, or emotional. The world tilts slightly because the action has entered it. Some people find this idea useful because it makes karma observable. You can watch how a choice affects attention, breathing, confidence, and connection. It is not always a thunderbolt from the unseen. Sometimes the return is already present in the state of mind produced by the deed. The action carries its own atmosphere, and the person who performs it is the first to live inside it. Other karmic results may take lifetimes to appear. This is where karma becomes vast and mysterious again. Some traditions teach that certain consequences do not ripen immediately because the right conditions are not yet present. A seed can remain dormant until soil, heat, moisture, and season come together. In the same way, karma may wait until circumstances allow it to unfold. This idea helps explain why life does not appear morally simple. A person may act well and still struggle. Another may act destructively and seem protected for a time. The ancient answer is that time is larger than one visible chapter. For people who enjoy speculative possibilities, this is deeply compelling. It imagines existence as a long moral continuity, where causes can sleep beneath awareness. The present life may be one page in a much larger record. That does not prove every event has an obvious karmic explanation. It simply opens the unsettling possibility that consequence may operate on a timescale human memory cannot reach. Karma turns everyday speech into spiritual practice. Words are actions. That is the simple fact many people forget. Speech can soothe, manipulate, reveal, conceal, encourage, or damage. Karma gives language moral weight because speaking is one of the main ways intention enters the world. A sentence can change a relationship. A rumor can travel farther than the speaker ever intended. A promise can become a bond that shapes years of trust. This is why many traditions treat right speech as a serious path. It is not about being polite for appearances. It is about recognizing that the mouth can create consequences faster than the hands. Some people find this almost paranormal in its reach. A word leaves the body as sound, then continues as memory, emotion, and behavior in other minds. It can outlive the moment of speaking. Karma asks us to notice that language does not disappear after being heard. It becomes part of the world's next movement. A harsh word can shape both speaker and listener. The listener may carry the sting, but the speaker is also changed. That is the hidden double effect. When a person speaks with cruelty, they strengthen the habit of using speech as a weapon. The mind learns that injury is acceptable when emotion is intense. The body may even feel a brief rush of power. But afterward, something has been trained. The listener may become guarded, ashamed, angry, or distant. Trust may weaken. A relationship may lose a layer of safety. This is why karma treats speech as more than communication. It is character in motion. Some people underestimate this because words seem light compared with physical acts. Yet one sentence can remain active in a person for decades. It can become an inner voice. It can shape confidence, fear, or resentment. The karmic lesson is direct. Speech does not merely describe the world. It can build the conditions in which people must live. Forgiveness can stop cycles that revenge would continue. Revenge feels active, but it often keeps the original harm alive. It carries the past into new action and gives suffering another body to move through. Forgiveness, in the karmic sense, is not pretending that harm was acceptable. It is refusing to become a servant of the injury. This is why the teaching can be so powerful. It breaks the chain at the place where reaction usually takes over. A person may still seek justice. They may still protect themselves. But they do not let hatred decide their future. Some people view forgiveness as a kind of spiritual sabotage against old patterns. The cycle expects another wound, another retaliation, another reason to continue. Forgiveness interrupts that machinery. It says the past will not be allowed to reproduce itself endlessly through me. That does not make the process easy. It makes it profound. The one who forgives is not weak. They are refusing to feed the chain. Buddhist teachings say greed corrupts karma at its root. Greed is not only wanting something. It is the mind gripping so tightly that wisdom begins to disappear. In Buddhist thought, greed is one of the deep poisons because it turns the world into an object of appetite. People become useful only when they satisfy desire. Possessions become extensions of identity. Experiences become things to consume and repeat. From that state, action becomes distorted before it even begins. A generous act may become a transaction. A relationship may become a possession. A spiritual practice may become another achievement to display. This is why greed corrupts karma at the source. It shapes the intention that gives action its direction. Some people see this as an ancient diagnosis of modern life. A culture can train endless wanting and then wonder why peace feels impossible. Karma points back to the root. The problem is not only what someone takes. It is the hunger that keeps taking normal. Hatred creates suffering inside before it harms anyone else. This teaching is easy to understand and hard to accept. Hatred may be aimed outward, but it burns inward first. The person carrying it must rehearse the injury, keep the enemy vivid, and return again and again to the same mental poison. Even before any action is taken, the mind is already changed. Sleep may suffer. Judgment may narrow. Compassion may become harder to access. The hated person may not even know they are being hated, yet the one holding hatred is already living with its effects. Karma makes this painfully clear. Harmful states are not neutral tools. They reshape the one who uses them. Some people are fascinated by this because it turns revenge fantasy inside out. The weapon begins working before it reaches its target. Hatred may promise strength, but it often creates dependence on the very wound one wants to escape. The karmic warning is severe. What you carry can carry you. Delusion is dangerous because it mistakes harm for help. Among the great inner poisons, delusion may be the hardest to notice. Greed and hatred can feel obvious, but delusion often wears the face of certainty. A person believes they are being realistic when they are being cruel. They call selfishness wisdom. They call avoidance peace. They call control love. This is why karmic traditions treat ignorance as spiritually dangerous. When perception is wrong, action follows the wrong map. The person may create harm while feeling completely justified. That is more frightening than ordinary weakness, because there is no inner alarm. Some people see delusion as the master disguise of karma. It allows a pattern to continue because the person cannot name it correctly. This is why teachings on awareness are not soft or decorative. They are urgent. To see clearly is to prevent future harm at its root. Without clear seeing, even intelligence can become a servant of confusion. The Yoga Sutras link karma with deep mental patterns. In the Yoga Sutras, the mind is not treated as a blank surface. It carries impressions, tendencies, and stored potentials that can influence future experience. Karma is part of that hidden machinery. Actions leave traces, and those traces can shape perception, desire, fear, and behavior. This is one reason the yogic path is not only about posture. It is a disciplined investigation of consciousness. The practitioner learns to watch the movements of the mind with precision. A reaction that once seemed personal may be seen as a pattern. A craving that felt like truth may be recognized as conditioning. Some people are drawn to this because it sounds like ancient mind science. Beneath ordinary thought, there may be layers of stored momentum. The question is whether those layers are running the life without being noticed. Yoga offers a striking possibility. By stilling and seeing the mind, a person may stop being controlled by the old programming. Samskara means past actions can leave patterns in consciousness. A samskara is like a groove made by experience and repetition. It is not merely a memory you can describe. It is a tendency that can shape what you notice, how you react, and what feels natural to you. If someone has practiced fear for many years, fear may arise before evidence is clear. If someone has practiced generosity, helping may feel almost instinctive. This is why karma becomes intimate. The past is not gone just because the event has ended. It may remain as a pattern in the mind's structure. Some people find this deeply revealing because it explains why change can be difficult, even when we understand the problem. Insight is important, but the groove may still pull. The old route has been traveled many times. Spiritual discipline tries to create new grooves through attention and action. In this sense, transformation is not only belief, it is the patient reshaping of consciousness. Karma is not the same as fate. The difference matters because confusing them can ruin the teaching. Fate suggests a fixed script. Karma suggests a chain of causes that can still be influenced. The past may shape the present, but it does not remove all choice. This is why karma is more demanding than fatalism. Fatalism can become an excuse. Karma removes excuses by saying that action still matters. A person may inherit a difficult pattern, but how they meet that pattern becomes part of the next consequence. This is a subtle but powerful distinction. Some people assume spiritual traditions make people passive. Karma properly understood, can do the opposite. It tells you that your next action is not meaningless. Even a small change in conduct can alter the direction of the chain. The door may not be wide open, but it is not sealed shut. The teaching does not say everything is under your control. It says responsibility remains real. Fate closes the future, while karma keeps responsibility alive. When people say something was fated, they often mean no one could have done otherwise. Karma speaks in a different register. It allows the past to matter without making the future dead. This keeps moral life alive. A person can inherit consequences and still create new ones. A society can carry old patterns and still choose whether to deepen or interrupt them. That is why karma can be both sobering and hopeful. It says the present is charged with inherited force, but it also contains creative power. Some people see this as a hidden third path between blame and helplessness. You do not have to pretend you created every condition in your life. You also do not have to pretend your conduct has no effect. The teaching places you inside a moving stream. You did not create the whole river, but every stroke changes your relation to it. Responsibility is not a burden added to life. It is life becoming conscious. Some suffering should not be blamed on visible wrongdoing. This warning is essential because karma can be misused. When someone is in pain, it is cruel to assume they must have earned it through some obvious fault. Many traditions recognize that life is complex. Bodies become ill. Accidents happen. Social conditions harm people. Other beings make choices that affect us. Karma may be one factor in a larger field, but it should not become a weapon against the vulnerable. This is where wisdom must restrain speculation. The person's suffering is not an invitation for spiritual gossip. It is an invitation for compassion. Some people forget this and turn karma into a cold explanation for everything. That is not depth. It is laziness with religious language. The more serious teaching says we rarely see enough to judge the full chain of causes. The practical response to suffering is not accusation. It is care, clarity, and help where help can be given. Wise traditions warn against judging another person's karma. The reason is simple. We do not have enough information. We see a fragment of someone's life, then imagine we understand the whole moral story. Karma warns against that arrogance. A person's present situation may involve history, context, hidden service, inherited conditions, social forces, private struggle, and choices no outsider can see. To declare what someone deserves is to pretend to stand above the law we barely understand. This is especially important for spiritual people, because spiritual ideas can make judgment sound holy. The teaching becomes dangerous when it feeds superiority. Some people believe they are explaining karma when they are really protecting their own comfort. If suffering can be blamed on the sufferer, then the observer does not have to feel responsible. Wise traditions cut through that. They say the proper response is humility. You can examine your own actions with seriousness. You should approach another person's pain with restraint. Compassion matters because nobody sees every cause at work. Compassion is not sentimental in this teaching. It is rational humility. Since no one can trace every cause behind a person's life, the safest and wisest response is care. Someone may be difficult because they are carrying pain you cannot see. Someone may fail because conditions were heavier than they looked. Someone may harm others because confusion has become deep. Compassion does not excuse wrongdoing, but it refuses to flatten a human being into one visible act. Karma, properly understood, expands the field of causes beyond simple blame. This makes compassion more intelligent, not less. Some people are fascinated by this because it turns moral life from a courtroom into an investigation. Instead of rushing to condemn, we ask what forces are moving here. The answer may be larger than personal weakness. It may include fear, habit, ignorance, pressure, and suffering. Compassion keeps the mind open long enough to respond wisely. Karma becomes cruel when people use it to blame victims. This is one of the clearest ways a profound teaching can be corrupted. Someone suffers, and instead of offering help, another person says, "It must be their karma." That statement may sound spiritual, but it can become a shield against responsibility. It allows the observer to step back from compassion while pretending to understand justice. The danger is serious. Karma was meant to deepen moral awareness, not erase human care. When used to blame victims, it becomes a tool of indifference. It can protect the comfortable from feeling disturbed by the pain of others. It can even support unfair systems by making suffering look deserved. Some people are drawn to hidden explanations, but this is where discernment matters. Not every explanation is wisdom. A real karmic perspective should make a person more careful, more humble, and more willing to reduce harm. If the idea makes someone colder, something has gone wrong. The deepest teachings make karma humbling, not self-righteous. A person who really considers karma should become less eager to judge. The teaching says every thought, motive, word, and action can matter. That is not a platform for superiority. It is a mirror. Anyone who looks honestly will see mixed motives, careless speech, forgotten debts, secret pride, and many moments where they could have acted better. This does not have to create shame. It can create humility. The mature understanding of karma turns attention inward first. It asks, what am I putting into the world right now? What pattern am I strengthening? What consequence am I helping to create? Some people use karma to feel morally advanced, but that misses the point. The more deeply one sees consequence, the less casual one becomes. Life is too interconnected for smugness. Every person is learning inside conditions they do not fully control. The serious student of karma does not stand above others. They becomes more careful with every step. A good deed done quietly may train the heart most. When nobody sees an act of goodness, the usual rewards disappear. There is no applause, no reputation, no public identity to polish. That is why hidden goodness can be so powerful. It reveals what the person values when performance is removed. A private act of kindness may strengthen sincerity more than a public gesture. It teaches the heart that doing good does not have to be paid in attention. This is deeply relevant in an age where almost everything can be displayed. Karma asks what remains when the camera is absent. Some people see secret virtue as a kind of inner experiment. Can the mind give without needing to be seen? Can it choose decency when there is no advantage? The result may be subtle, but it is not small. The person becomes less dependent on outside confirmation. The action may vanish from public record, yet it may leave a lasting mark inside the giver. Selfish virtue still binds the mind to self-concern. A person can do the right thing and still remain trapped by the wrong center. This is one of the more uncomfortable karmic teachings, because it says morality can become another form of self-obsession. Someone may serve, donate, advise, or sacrifice while secretly building a private monument to their own goodness. The world may see virtue, but the inner movement is still circling the self. That matters because karma is not only concerned with the outer result, it is also concerned with the habit being strengthened. If every good act becomes a way to feel superior, the mind is still practicing bondage. It has simply learned to wear noble clothing. Some people find this idea fascinating because it exposes a hidden trap in spiritual life. The ego does not always resist goodness. Sometimes it uses goodness as a disguise. The real test is whether an action makes the heart more open or merely makes the self more important. The Mahabharata shows karma through families, vows, and consequences. The great Indian epic does not present karma as a tidy rule. It shows it as a living force moving through generations. A promise made years earlier can shape a kingdom. A wound inside one family can become a disaster for many people. A noble vow can produce terrible pressure when circumstances change. That is why the Mahabharata feels so powerful. It does not give us a simple world where good people make clean choices and bad people receive quick punishment. It gives us entangled lives. Duty, loyalty, pride, humiliation, and ambition all produce results that no single person fully controls. Some people read it almost like an ancient map of inherited consequence. One decision becomes a tradition. One insult becomes a war. One silence lets a wrong grow larger. The karmic lesson is vast. Human action does not remain inside the person who begins it. It enters families, institutions, memories, and the future choices of others. Arjuna learns that refusing action can also create consequences. The dramatic power of the Bhagavad Gita begins with hesitation. Arjuna does not rush into action. He stops, looks at the people before him, and feels the terrible weight of what may follow. His reluctance is not cowardice. It is moral shock. Yet the teaching that follows is startling. Not acting is also an action when a duty is present. Avoidance may feel innocent, but it can allow harm to continue. This turns karma into something more demanding than ordinary morality. It is not enough to keep one's hands clean if withdrawal permits disorder to grow. Some people find this deeply relevant because modern life offers endless ways to avoid responsibility while calling it peace. Silence can become a choice. Delay can become a choice. Looking away can become a choice. Karma does not ask only what you did. It also asks what happened because you refused to move when movement was required. Karma includes what we avoid doing when action is needed. There are moments when the most important deed is the one never done. A person sees unfairness and says nothing. A friend needs help and nobody calls. A danger is recognized, but comfort wins over courage. Karma gives these omissions real weight because life is shaped by absences as well as visible acts. A missing apology can change a relationship for years. A withheld truth can let confusion spread. A refusal to help can teach the heart to shrink. This is a serious teaching because it removes the easy defense of passivity. We may not be able to fix everything, but we are still responsible for the moments that clearly ask something of us. Some people see this as the hidden side of moral cause and effect. The universe is not only moved by what is done, it is also affected by what could have been prevented, repaired, or spoken before the pattern hardened. In Buddhism, karma is only one cause among many. This is one of the most important safeguards in the teaching. Buddhism does not reduce all experience to past moral action. Life arises through many causes. The body has causes. Weather has causes. Society has causes. Biology has causes. Other people's choices have causes. Karma matters, but it is not the only force at work. This makes the teaching more careful than many modern versions. It prevents people from saying that every accident, illness, loss, or struggle is simply deserved. That kind of thinking can become cruel. The Buddhist view is more nuanced. It asks us to understand the complex web through which events arise. Some people find this especially fascinating because it makes reality look like an enormous causal network. Karma is one strand in the pattern, not the whole pattern. That means moral action is serious, but interpretation requires humility. We can examine conduct without pretending to know every hidden cause. Not everything that happens is explained by past karma. This statement sounds simple, yet it changes how the entire idea should be used. If every event is explained by someone's past actions, compassion can disappear. People begin to turn suffering into a verdict. But older and wiser teachings often resist that kind of simplification. They recognize that life includes chance, environment, collective behavior, natural processes, and other people's decisions. A person can be harmed by causes they did not create alone. That is why karma should never become a lazy answer for everything. It is a tool for moral attention, not a weapon for judging pain. Some people who love mysterious explanations can miss this point. The mystery of karma is not made stronger by forcing it onto every event. It becomes stronger when it is handled with precision. The right question is not always, what did this person do before? Sometimes the right question is, what should be done now? This detail stops karma from becoming spiritual oversimplification. Without this caution, karma can collapse into a crude slogan. Someone succeeds, so people assume they earned it. Someone suffers, so people assume they deserved it. That is not wisdom. It is a shortcut that flatters the observer. A deeper understanding keeps the teaching from becoming simplistic. It says, action matters, but the world is not a childish scoreboard. Conditions can be layered. Consequences can be delayed. Innocent people can be caught inside patterns larger than themselves. This is why mature traditions use karma with care. They do not let it replace investigation, responsibility, or compassion. Some people find this point surprisingly powerful because it protects the mystery from becoming nonsense. The unknown remains unknown. The visible facts remain important. Moral cause and effect is real, but it does not give anyone permission to pretend they can read the whole invisible record. Real depth often begins when the mind stops reaching for easy explanations. Tibetan Buddhism speaks of karmic seeds stored in consciousness. This image makes karma feel almost like hidden programming. Actions and intentions plant seeds in the stream of consciousness, and those seeds may ripen when the right conditions appear. A seed can remain inactive for a long time. Then a situation arrives, and a pattern suddenly appears with surprising strength. A person meets criticism, and anger erupts. Another meets loss, and compassion awakens. The response seems sudden, but the seed may have been waiting. Tibetan teachings often use this language to explain why practice matters even when results are not immediate. Meditation, ethical action, and compassion plant different possibilities in the mind. Some people find this captivating because it suggests that every moment is gardening in an unseen field. You may not see the crop today. You may not know which seed will ripen next. Yet the planting continues. Karma becomes less like punishment and more like a hidden ecology of consciousness. Zen brings karma back to the present moment. Zen often cuts through long speculation by asking what is happening now. The teaching is not rejected, but it is brought down from theory into immediate life. How are you standing? How are you breathing? How are you answering the person in front of you? What is the mind doing before the next word leaves your mouth? This makes karma direct. It is not only an invisible record from the past, it is the living movement of conduct in this instant. Some people are drawn to Zen because it refuses to let spiritual ideas become distant entertainment. It does not allow a person to hide in grand explanations while neglecting the next action. Wash the bowl. Open the door. Listen fully. Stop feeding the reaction. In that exact moment, karma is not a doctrine. It is the shape of attention becoming behavior. The mystery is not far away. It is happening before the thought finishes forming. The present action is always the most practical karma. The past may be vast, and the future may be hidden, but the present is where a person can actually move. This is why practical teachers keep returning to the next action. You cannot edit a lifetime of choices in a single breath. You cannot inspect every unseen consequence. You can choose the next word, the next refusal, the next act of honesty, or the next moment of restraint. That makes karma usable. It stops being a theory about invisible justice and becomes a training in conduct. Some people overlook this because they want the spectacular version of karma. They want secret histories, cosmic records, and dramatic payback. Those ideas may be interesting, but transformation begins in the ordinary decision that is available now. The next action may seem small, yet it is the only doorway through which a new pattern can enter. Karma becomes practical when attention returns to what can be done. Karma teaches that character is built before crisis arrives. A crisis does not create character from nothing. It reveals what has been practiced. When pressure comes, people usually fall back on the tendencies they have trained. Someone who has rehearsed honesty may find truth available even when it is costly. Someone who has practiced avoidance may disappear when courage is needed. This is where karma becomes a preparation for the unseen future. Every normal day is quietly training the person who will one day face a difficult hour. That idea can be sobering. The small irritations, the private choices, and the unobserved responses are not meaningless. They are rehearsals. Some people find this almost thrilling because it means heroic moments are not as sudden as they appear. The visible act may take seconds, but the inner strength may have been formed over years. Karma says that the important moment begins long before the world notices. The crisis only exposes what daily conduct has already built. Small choices matter because they prepare larger choices later. A person rarely becomes brave, honest, disciplined, or compassionate in one dramatic leap. These qualities are usually trained through smaller moments, returning a little too much change, admitting a small mistake, listening when it would be easier to interrupt, refusing a minor cruelty when nobody would object. Such choices may seem too ordinary to matter, but karma sees them as preparation. They create familiarity with a certain direction. Later, when the stakes rise, the mind reaches for what it already knows. This is why spiritual traditions take daily conduct seriously. The future self is being trained through tiny repetitions. Some people compare this to a hidden apprenticeship. Every day teaches the mind how to respond when the real test comes. The lesson is both encouraging and demanding. No small choice is final by itself, but none is completely empty. Each one may be laying track for a larger decision that has not yet arrived. A repeated lie makes truth harder to recognize. Lying does more than mislead someone else. It changes the liar's relationship with reality. The first lie may feel uncomfortable. The second may need a supporting story. The third may require selective memory. Soon the person is not only hiding the truth from others, they are protecting themselves from seeing it clearly. Karma becomes psychological here in a very precise way. The consequence of dishonesty is not only being caught, it is becoming less capable of honest perception. This is why traditions warn against false speech with such seriousness. A mind that practices distortion begins to live in a world of its own editing. Some people find this deeply unsettling because it explains how intelligent people can become trapped in their own fabrications. The punishment is not always external disgrace. Sometimes the result is stranger. The person loses contact with the simple facts that would have set them free. Honest speech can become a form of inner freedom. Truthfulness is not only a moral rule, it can be a way of releasing pressure from the mind. When a person speaks honestly, they no longer need to maintain false versions of events. They do not have to remember which mask was worn with which person. They do not have to keep defending a story that secretly drains them. This is why honest speech can feel liberating, even when it is difficult. It aligns the inner and outer life. Karma enters through that alignment. The mind becomes less divided, and action becomes less tangled. Some people think truth is valuable only because others deserve it. That is true, but incomplete. The speaker also becomes freer. A truthful life reduces the hidden labor of deception. It may not always make life easier in the short term, but it makes the self less fragmented. In karmic terms, truthfulness trains reality contact. It teaches the mind to stop hiding from what is. Anger may feel powerful while it plants weakness. The rush of anger can feel like strength. The body sharpens. The voice rises. The mind narrows around a target. For a moment, a person may feel certain and alive. Karma asks us to look beyond that moment. What has anger trained? It may have weakened patience. It may have damaged trust. It may have taught the mind to confuse intensity with clarity. This is why anger can become deceptive. It promises power while quietly reducing freedom. The person who cannot resist anger is not strong. They are being controlled by a state that passes through them. Some people find this idea surprising because anger often looks forceful from the outside. But spiritually, the question is different. Can the person choose? Can they see clearly while emotion is loud? Can they act without becoming possessed by reaction? If not, the apparent power may be bondage wearing a fierce expression. Patience can end karma that impatience would continue. Impatience often creates a second problem while trying to escape the first. A person feels delayed, challenged, or disrespected, then reacts in a way that causes more tension. A sharp reply creates an argument. A rushed choice produces a mistake. A refusal to wait breaks trust. Patience can interrupt that pattern before it multiplies. It does not mean doing nothing. It means refusing to let pressure choose the next action. In karmic terms, patience is powerful because it stops a chain from extending itself through reaction. The moment stretches, and inside that stretch, another future becomes possible. Some people think patience is passive, but that is a shallow reading. Real patience takes strength because it holds energy without throwing it outward blindly. It lets the mind regain proportion. It allows facts to appear. It gives compassion time to enter. One patient breath can prevent a whole sequence of consequences that would otherwise have been born. In many traditions, service purifies self-centered desire. Service works because it moves attention away from the narrow prison of self-importance. When a person serves sincerely, they encounter needs beyond their own appetite. This can begin to loosen the belief that life exists mainly to satisfy personal preference. That is why service appears in so many spiritual paths. It is not only charity, it is training. The person learns to act for a good that is not merely private. In karmic terms, this changes the inner direction of action. Desire still exists, but it is not always allowed to command the whole life. Some people find this idea powerful because it turns helping into a method of transformation. The person who serves is not above the person being helped. Both are inside the same field of consequence. Service becomes a way of remembering connection. It says, the self is not destroyed by caring for another. It is purified of its loneliness. Karma Yoga turns work itself into spiritual discipline. This is one of the most practical teachings in Indian wisdom. It says that ordinary work can become a path when it is done with the right intention. The workplace, the home, the field, the classroom, and the workshop can all become places of practice. What matters is not only the task, but the mind doing it. A person can work with attention, dedication, and service while releasing the obsession with personal reward. That turns action into discipline. It also changes the meaning of daily labor. Work is no longer merely a way to gain status or survive. It becomes a way to train freedom. Some people find this revolutionary because it removes the wall between spiritual life and practical life. You do not have to withdraw from responsibility to practice. The responsibility itself becomes the training ground. Every task asks whether the worker is feeding ego, resentment, greed, or something more spacious. The worker becomes freer by releasing the hunger for reward. This teaching does not ask a person to stop caring about quality. It asks them to stop making their inner worth depend on the outcome. The hunger for reward can make work anxious, calculating, and fragile. Praise becomes addictive. Failure becomes humiliating. Comparison becomes constant. When that hunger loosens, work can become clearer. The person still acts with skill, but the mind is less captured by what comes back. This is a strange kind of freedom because the outer task may remain the same. The difference is inward. Some people see this as an ancient cure for burnout. Much exhaustion comes not only from effort, but from the emotional bargaining attached to effort. Will I be noticed? Will I be admired? Will I win? Karma Yoga points to a steadier way. Do the action well because it is yours to do. Let the result arrive, but do not hand it the keys to your soul. This teaching influenced Gandhi's idea of selfless public action. Gandhi drew deeply from the Bhagavad Gita, especially its call to act without attachment to personal reward. This mattered because his public life required endurance under pressure. Political action can easily become a theater of ego, anger, revenge, and fame. The Gita offered a different model. Serve the cause, but do not become intoxicated by victory. Resist injustice, but do not let hatred become the master. Act with discipline, but do not claim ownership over every result. This is one reason Karma Yoga became more than private spirituality. It entered the world of public struggle. Some people find this fascinating because it shows how an ancient teaching can affect modern history. A text about action, duty, and inner freedom helped shape a method of resistance that influenced movements far beyond India. The karmic idea moved from scripture into streets, prisons, speeches, and campaigns. It became a way to act fiercely without surrendering the soul to anger. Karma can be understood as ethics with memory. Most ethical systems tell people what they should do. Karma adds another dimension. It says, actions do not simply disappear after they are done. They leave consequences, impressions, tendencies, relationships, and conditions that continue beyond the original moment. In that sense, ethics has memory. A promise kept strengthens trust. A betrayal changes what others expect. A repeated kindness creates a climate around a person. A hidden cruelty may return as fear, isolation, or inner disturbance. Some people are drawn to this because it makes morality feel less like a list of rules and more like a living record. The world remembers through effects. The body remembers through habits. The mind remembers through patterns. Relationships remember through trust or caution. Whether one sees this spiritually or psychologically, the insight is gripping. Nothing important is truly gone just because time has passed. Action remains active through what it has changed. Some Western thinkers compared karma to moral ecology. The comparison is useful because ecology studies relationships, feedback, and systems. A single action can affect a larger field. Throw waste into a river, and the result does not stay in one place. In moral life, the same principle can apply. A cruel workplace culture spreads stress. A generous household trains openness. A dishonest institution creates suspicion far beyond one decision. Karma can be seen as the ecology of action. Every deed enters an environment of minds, bodies, relationships, and future possibilities. Some people like this framing because it makes ancient wisdom feel strangely contemporary. We already understand that ecosystems respond to what is introduced into them. Karma asks whether moral reality works in a similar way. The action may be small, but systems magnify patterns. A single choice can become a signal. A signal can become a norm. The norm can become the atmosphere others must breathe. Ethics is not private when consequences are shared. Theosophy helped bring karma into modern Western spirituality. In the 19th century, theosophy played a major role in introducing ideas like karma and reincarnation to Western audiences. It blended Indian concepts with esoteric speculation, occult interests, and new religious curiosity. This was not always a clean or accurate transmission, but it was influential. The word karma began moving into circles interested in hidden laws, unseen planes, spiritual evolution, and the secret structure of reality. That history matters because much of today's popular karma talk did not come straight from ancient India. It passed through Western reinterpretation. Some people find this fascinating because it shows how spiritual ideas travel and transform. A concept rooted in Sanskrit traditions became part of modern alternative spirituality, self-help, and mystical subcultures. Along the way, it gained new meanings and lost some older precision. The result is the karma many people recognize today. It is ancient in origin, but also shaped by modern hunger for invisible order. Popular culture often turns karma into instant payback. This version is everywhere. Someone acts badly, something embarrassing happens, and people call it karma. It is satisfying because it makes the world look fair in a quick and dramatic way. The problem is that this is usually a very thin version of the teaching. Instant payback is entertaining, but it can make karma look like cosmic revenge. Older traditions were often more patient and more concerned with inner transformation. They asked what action does to character, intention, rebirth, attachment, and liberation. Popular culture usually wants a simpler story. Bad person falls down. Good person smiles. Justice is complete. Some people enjoy that version because it feels emotionally neat. Yet the deeper teaching is far more interesting. It does not need every consequence to appear on camera. It asks what is happening beneath the visible event. The real karmic result may not be the public embarrassment. It may be the pattern being strengthened inside the person. Ancient teachings usually describe karma as slower and subtler. The older view often works more like a long unfolding than a sudden strike. Consequences may move through habits, relationships, states of mind, future opportunities, and conditions beyond immediate sight. This makes karma harder to dramatize, but much more profound. A selfish act may not bring disaster that afternoon. It may slowly make trust harder to build. A generous act may not bring wealth. It may train a capacity for joy that changes the quality of a life. The subtlety is the point. Karma is not always visible from the outside. It may move through the inner architecture of a person. Some people who enjoy hidden patterns find this much more compelling than instant payback. It suggests that the surface of life is not the whole story. Effects may be gathering below awareness. Choices may be shaping futures no one has named yet. The ancient teaching asks for patience because consequence may be deeper than spectacle. Collective karma asks whether groups inherit shared consequences. This idea expands karma beyond the individual. It asks whether communities, institutions, and nations can carry results from shared actions. The question is difficult and powerful. A group can build trust over generations, or it can build fear. A society can normalize compassion, or it can normalize exploitation. Later, people may inherit conditions they did not personally create, yet they still live inside the results. That is the basic intuition behind collective karma. Some people are drawn to it because it helps explain why history feels active in the present. Old decisions do not vanish when the original decision-makers are gone. They can remain as laws, customs, wealth, trauma, suspicion, or opportunity. The teaching becomes challenging because it asks what responsibility means inside inherited patterns. No single person created the whole situation, but every person helps decide whether it continues. Karma becomes a shared field, not merely a private ledger. Nations can create patterns that outlive individual leaders. A ruler may die, a government may change, and a generation may pass. Yet the effects of national choices can remain. Policies create institutions. Institutions create habits. Habits become expectations. Over time, a nation can develop a karmic pattern in the broad moral sense. It may become known for trust and fairness, or for fear and domination. It may teach its citizens cooperation, suspicion, courage, or obedience. These patterns do not depend on one leader alone. They are built through repeated public action. Some people find this fascinating because it makes history feel less like a sequence of dates and more like accumulated consequence. A treaty, a betrayal, a reform, or a failure to act can echo for decades. The karmic question becomes national as well as personal. What kind of future is being trained through public conduct? The answer may not be visible at once, but later generations may live inside it. Families often pass down habits that feel almost karmic. Within families, patterns can travel without anyone naming them. A parent's fear becomes a child's caution. A grandparent's silence becomes a household rule. A wound that was never explained becomes an atmosphere everyone learns to breathe. This is not karma in the simple sense of reward and punishment. It is karma as inherited pattern. Actions leave traces in the people nearest to them. A family may pass down generosity, secrecy, resilience, shame, humor, or suspicion. Some people find this deeply revealing because it shows how the past can remain active without appearing supernatural. The family becomes a living archive. Children may carry responses to events they never witnessed. Adults may repeat dynamics they once promised to escape. The hopeful part is that patterns can also be interrupted. One person who tells the truth, seeks healing, or chooses kindness under pressure can alter the inheritance. Family karma can be heavy, but it is not unchangeable. Modern psychology echoes karma through conditioning and habit loops. Psychology offers a different language, but some of the overlap is striking. Repeated behavior strengthens associations. Reward and discomfort shape future choices. Emotional reactions become easier to repeat when they are practiced often. This resembles one practical side of karma. Actions leave patterns, and patterns influence future action. A person who always escapes stress through avoidance may become more avoidant. A person who practices calm attention may become more able to pause. The language is modern, but the insight is ancient. Some people find this connection exciting because it suggests karma is not only mystical, it is also visible in how humans learn. The mind becomes trained by what it repeatedly does. Of course, psychology does not prove every spiritual claim about karma. It does show that conduct has consequences inside the person. The old teaching and the modern model meet at a simple point. What you practice becomes easier to practice again. Neuroscience shows repeated actions can strengthen mental pathways. The brain changes through use. When a person repeats a behavior, thought, or emotional response, related neural pathways can become more efficient. This does not reduce karma to brain chemistry, but it gives a fascinating modern echo to the ancient claim that action leaves traces. Practice makes certain responses more available. Worry can become easier to enter. Compassion can become more natural. Anger can become a well-worn route. Attention can become steadier through training. Some people find this bridge between ancient wisdom and modern science compelling because it makes transformation feel concrete. The mind is not fixed. The brain is not merely a static machine. Repetition matters. In karmic language, every action helps shape the conditions for the next action. In scientific language, the nervous system adapts to what it does often. Either way, the implication is powerful. Your ordinary repetitions may be physically participating in the person you are becoming. Karma becomes practical when understood as training attention. Attention is the gateway through which action enters the world. Before a word is spoken or a choice is made, the mind has already selected what matters. It notices an insult, a desire, a fear, or a chance to help. That selection changes everything. If attention keeps returning to threat, the person becomes defensive. If it keeps returning to status, the person becomes restless. If it keeps returning to care, the person becomes more available to kindness. This is where karma stops sounding distant and becomes immediately useful. It is not only about what you do after a situation appears. It is about what your mind has been trained to see. Some people treat attention almost like a hidden steering system. The eyes may look at the same event, yet different minds enter different futures because they notice different things. Karma becomes practical when we realize that changing attention can change the action that follows. Mindfulness helps reveal karma before it becomes behavior. The power of mindfulness is that it slows down the invisible moment before action. A person notices irritation before it becomes speech. They notice craving before the hand reaches. They notice fear before it turns into control. This is not passive observation. It is a way of seeing the beginning of karma while it is still soft enough to change. Many harmful actions feel automatic because the inner movement goes unnoticed. Mindfulness brings that movement into view. It gives the mind a chance to interrupt a pattern. Some people find this almost like discovering a hidden control room inside ordinary life. The reaction was not destiny. It was a sequence. Sensation appeared. Meaning was added. Emotion gathered. Action prepared itself. When that sequence is seen, freedom enters. The karmic chain does not have to be broken at the end, after damage is done. It can be broken at the first spark of awareness. A pause can change the future of one reaction. A single pause may look like nothing from the outside, yet it can redirect an entire chain of consequence. Someone says something sharp. The old habit prepares to strike back. The body tightens, the mouth opens, and then there is one breath of space. In that breath, another future becomes possible. The reply may soften. The silence may hold. The question may replace the accusation. This is why many wisdom traditions treat restraint as strength. It is not weakness to stop before acting. It is the ability to prevent a passing impulse from becoming a permanent result. Some people underestimate the pause because it lacks drama. But karma often turns on undramatic moments. A marriage, friendship, workplace, or family atmosphere can change because one person refuses to continue the usual script. The pause does not erase the past. It keeps the past from automatically writing the next line. Resentment repeats the past inside the present mind. Resentment is one of the strangest karmic traps because it keeps an old injury active long after the original moment has passed. The person may be sitting in a new room, speaking to different people, living a different day, yet the mind is still rehearsing the wound. This creates a hidden form of repetition. The past is not remembered once. It is rebuilt again and again. Each rehearsal strengthens the emotional pathway and makes the story feel more solid. Some people think resentment protects them from being hurt again. Sometimes it begins that way. But over time, it can become a private prison where the offender has long departed and the injured person remains guarded. Karma sees this as serious because inner repetition shapes future response. A resentful mind may misread neutral events as threats. It may punish new people for old harms. Freedom begins when the past is remembered without being continually renewed. Gratitude can redirect attention away from craving. Craving keeps the mind fixed on absence. It says something is missing, and peace must wait until the missing thing appears. Gratitude interrupts that trance by turning attention toward what is already present. This does not mean pretending life is perfect. It means refusing to let desire define the whole field of awareness. In karmic terms, gratitude changes what the mind practices. Instead of rehearsing lack, it rehearses recognition. Instead of feeding the restless search for more, it notices enoughness in specific moments. Some people dismiss gratitude as soft advice, but the deeper teaching is sharper. Whatever the mind returns to becomes stronger. A mind trained only in wanting may become unable to rest, even when it receives what it wanted. Gratitude trains a different capacity. It allows pleasure without possession. It allows ordinary life to register as meaningful. That shift can alter the next action because a less desperate mind makes fewer desperate choices. Craving keeps karma moving by always demanding another outcome. Craving is never satisfied for long because its deeper habit is not possession. Its deeper habit is reaching. A person gets the object, the praise, the comfort, or the victory, and soon the mind asks for more. This endless demand keeps action in motion. It pushes people to chase, defend, compare, and repeat. In many traditions, this is one of the forces that drives the cycle of becoming. The person is poured forward by the feeling that completion is just ahead. Yet each arrival becomes another departure. Some people find this unnerving because it explains why success can fail to bring peace. The problem was not only that the desired thing was absent. The problem was the machinery of desire itself. Karma continues because craving keeps generating fresh intentions. It creates new efforts, new attachments, new disappointments, and new identities. To see craving clearly is to recognize the engine beneath many choices that once felt free. Detachment means freedom from clinging, not freedom from love. This distinction is essential because many people hear detachment and imagine emotional emptiness. The older teaching is more precise. Detachment does not mean refusing to care. It means refusing to grip what cannot be possessed. Love can be generous, attentive, and brave without becoming control. Clinging turns love into fear because it demands certainty from a changing world. It says, this person, role, success, or comfort must remain exactly as I need it. When reality moves, the clinging mind suffers and often causes suffering. Detachment allows care to breathe. A parent can love a child without trying to own the child's path. A partner can love without turning affection into surveillance. A seeker can love truth without needing to win every argument. Some people find this teaching liberating because it preserves warmth while removing possession. Karma changes when love stops being used to feed insecurity. The action can then come from care rather than panic. Some teachers call wisdom the fire that burns karma. The image is striking because it suggests that karma is not only balanced by future experience, it can be transformed through insight. When a person sees clearly into the nature of action, desire, self, and consequence, the old patterns lose fuel. Wisdom burns karma because it reveals the mechanism that kept producing it. A person who truly sees that anger brings bondage is less likely to worship anger as strength. A person who sees that grasping creates unrest is less easily seduced by possession. This is not information alone. It is deep seeing that changes behavior at the root. Some people are fascinated by this because it implies that consciousness itself can alter destiny. The past may have momentum, but insight can change the way momentum is received. Old seeds may still appear, yet the mind no longer waters them in the same way. Wisdom does not merely explain the chain. It weakens the chain's authority. Real insight changes the pattern before it repeats again. An insight is not just an interesting thought. It becomes real when it interrupts repetition. A person may say they understand their anger, but the test comes when the old trigger appears. If the same reaction unfolds in the same way, the insight has not yet reached the pattern. True seeing has practical force. It changes timing, tone, choice, and response. In karmic terms, this matters because patterns continue through repeated enactment. The moment before repetition is sacred ground. If awareness enters there, the future can shift. Some people find this idea hopeful because it means change does not require rewriting the entire past. It requires meeting the next recurrence differently. The old situation may return. The familiar emotion may arise. The body may prepare the known response. Then, something new happens. The person sees the pattern as a pattern, not as a command. That recognition can be enough to begin a different chain. Rituals mattered because they trained discipline around invisible consequence. To modernize, ancient rituals can look strange or overly formal. But within karmic cultures, ritual often served a serious purpose. It taught people that unseen forces deserved careful attention. A gesture had to be performed in the right way. A word had to be spoken with care. A time, place, and intention could matter. This trained the mind to respect consequence beyond immediate appearance. Whether one believes in the full ritual system or not, the psychology is fascinating. Ritual makes invisible meaning visible through repeated action. It tells the body that conduct is not casual. Some people see ritual as an ancient technology for shaping attention. It slows the person down and gives form to intention. In a world where people often act impulsively, that discipline has obvious power. Karma and ritual meet in this shared idea. What you do matters more when you remember that not every result is immediately seen. Sacrifice once shaped early ideas about cosmic order. In early Vedic religion, sacrifice was not merely an offering. It was connected to maintaining a larger order of life. The ritual act linked human action with cosmic stability. Fire, chant, gift, and intention were treated as part of a serious exchange between visible and invisible realms. This background matters because karma grew in a world where action already had sacred weight. What a person did could affect more than personal mood or social reputation. It could participate in the structure of reality. Some people find this astonishing because it suggests that ancient ritual specialists imagined human action as cosmically active. The universe was not a dead stage. It responded through order, obligation, and return. Later teachings moved in new directions, but this early ritual imagination helped prepare the ground. Karma would eventually become more ethical and inward, yet the older sense remained powerful. Action was never just action. It belonged to the order of things. Later sages moved the focus from ritual to self-knowledge. A major transformation happened when the deepest question shifted inward. Instead of asking only how rituals should be performed, sages began asking who performs them, what the self is, and why beings remain bound. This shift changed the meaning of karma. Action still mattered, but knowing the self became central to freedom. The problem was no longer only incorrect performance. It was ignorance of reality. A person could complete outer duties and still remain trapped by desire, fear, and false identity. Some people find this move fascinating because it feels like a spiritual revolution. The sacred fire was no longer only outside. The real investigation moved into consciousness itself. This did not make action irrelevant. It made action part of a larger search for truth. The question became sharper. What good is perfect performance if the performer does not understand who they are? Karma became tied to awakening, not merely correct religious behavior. The law of karma made ethics cosmic in scale. Most people think of ethics as human agreement. Do not lie, because trust will suffer. Do not harm, because society must function. Karma lifts the question into a much larger frame. It says, moral action is not only social. It belongs to the structure of existence. A hidden act still matters. A private motive still counts. A deed forgotten by history may still carry force. This idea is enormous. It means that right and wrong are not merely preferences agreed upon by a group. They may be woven into the way life unfolds. Some people are drawn to this because it challenges the modern assumption that the universe is morally silent. Karma suggests that existence may answer action in ways subtler than law courts and public opinion. Whether understood spiritually or psychologically, the scale changes everything. Ethics becomes more than reputation management. It becomes participation in a reality where nothing done with intention is entirely without consequence. Stillness matters because action begins before the body moves. Before the hand acts, the mind has already leaned in a direction. Before the voice speaks, intention has already taken shape. Stillness matters because it lets a person notice that beginning. Without stillness, we often meet life at the level of impulse. Something happens, and the body reacts before wisdom arrives. With stillness, the hidden start of action becomes visible. A person can feel the urge to defend, impress, grasp, or wound before it becomes behavior. This is why meditation and contemplation are tied so closely to karma. They are not escapes from action. They are ways of understanding action at its root. Some people find this surprising because stillness looks inactive. In truth, it may be one of the most practical forms of preparation. The unmoving body can reveal the moving mind. Once the movement is seen clearly, the next outward act may no longer be controlled by habit. A motive can look generous while being driven by hunger. The outer action may appear admirable, but the inner engine can be very different. A person may give help because they cannot bear being unneeded. They may offer advice because they enjoy superiority. They may sacrifice because they want emotional control over someone later. Karma pays attention to that hidden engine. This is not meant to make people paranoid about every good deed. It is meant to make self-honesty possible. Human motives are often mixed. The visible action tells part of the story, but the deeper lesson lies in what the action is feeding. Some people find this fascinating because it makes morality more like detective work than rule-keeping. The question is not only, was the deed useful? The question is, what did it strengthen inside the doer? If generosity feeds freedom, it purifies. If it feeds neediness, domination, or self-importance, it may create a new bond while pretending to loosen one. Karma invites self-examination without hatred for oneself. This balance is difficult and necessary. Karma asks people to look closely at their actions, but it does not require self-cruelty. Honest examination can become destructive when a person turns every mistake into proof that they are hopeless. The wiser approach is different. Look clearly, take responsibility, learn the pattern, and choose the next action with more care. Shame often freezes the mind. Responsibility can move it. This matters because karmic thinking should awaken conduct, not trap a person in self-punishment. Some people who discover moral consequence become frightened of their past. But the teaching is most useful when it brings attention back to the present. What can be understood now? What can be repaired now? What can stop being repeated now? The point is not to hate the person who acted in ignorance. The point is to stop letting ignorance act unchallenged. Self-examination becomes medicine when it serves transformation. Regret becomes useful only when it changes future conduct. Regret can be a doorway or a cage. If it only repeats the past in the mind, it becomes another form of suffering. The same scene plays again. The same shame rises again, and nothing new is born. Karma asks for something more practical. Regret should clarify action. It should reveal what must not be repeated. It should point toward apology, restraint, repair, or a wiser decision next time. Without that movement, regret remains self-focused. It becomes a private theater of pain. Some people find this teaching bracing because it cuts through emotional drama. Feeling bad is not the same as becoming better. The karmic value of regret lies in the change it produces. A person may not be able to erase what happened, but they can prevent the pattern from claiming the future. In that sense, regret becomes meaningful only when it turns memory into discipline. Confession in some traditions helps loosen karmic weight. Confession is not only about admitting guilt to another person. In many spiritual contexts, it is a way of bringing hidden action into truth. A wrong kept secret can harden around the mind. The person must protect it, explain it, and live around it. Confession breaks that private enclosure. It says, "This happened, and I will no longer let concealment be part of the pattern." That can loosen karmic weight because the action is no longer being fed by denial. Some people find this idea powerful because it shows why truth-telling can feel physically relieving. The hidden burden becomes spoken. The false self loses some of its material. Of course, confession is not magic. It does not replace repair. It does not undo harm by itself, but it can mark a turning point. The person stops cooperating with secrecy. They step into accountability, and that step can change what the next action becomes. Merit-making in Buddhism turns kindness into deliberate cultivation. In many Buddhist cultures, merit is generated through wholesome actions such as giving, ethical conduct, and support for spiritual practice. The idea is not merely to collect invisible points. At its best, merit-making trains the heart toward generosity and reverence. A person gives food, offers help, supports a monastery, or dedicates an act for another's welfare. The deed becomes part of a wider path. This can look simple from the outside, but it carries a deep logic. Repeated kindness shapes the mind. It creates conditions for future clarity. It also links personal practice with community life. Some people find merit-making fascinating because it treats goodness as something cultivated intentionally, not left to mood. You do not wait until you feel perfectly selfless. You practice giving until the mind becomes less captive to selfishness. Karma becomes a path of deliberate planting. The harvest is not only future fortune, it is a heart trained toward release. Monks often dedicate merit for the benefit of all beings. This practice changes the emotional scale of good action. Instead of keeping merit as a private possession, the practitioner offers its benefit outward. The act says that goodness should not end with the individual. It should be shared with the whole field of life. Whether one understands this literally, symbolically, or devotionally, the meaning is striking. It trains the mind away from spiritual selfishness. Even progress on the path is not clutched as personal treasure. It is turned toward others. Some people find this one of the most beautiful and radical features of Buddhist practice. The ego wants to own achievement, even holy achievement. Dedication loosens that grip. It says, "May whatever good has arisen serve more than me." In karmic terms, the intention expands the act. The deed becomes linked with compassion rather than self-congratulation. A simple offering becomes a statement about the kind of universe the practitioner wants to help create. In Jain practice, careful walking expresses radical moral attention. To many outsiders, the careful movements of Jain monks and nuns can seem almost impossible in their seriousness. Some may sweep the ground before stepping, or move with extraordinary restraint. The reason is not performance. It comes from a profound commitment to reduce harm to living beings, including tiny forms of life that most people never consider. This makes walking itself a moral act. Every step becomes part of the spiritual path. Some people find this astonishing because it takes ethics down to the level of movement. The body is not exempt from conscience. The ordinary act of crossing a floor becomes an opportunity to practice awareness. In karmic terms, this shows how far responsibility can extend when a tradition takes consequence seriously. It challenges the casual way many of us move through the world. What if care did not begin only when harm is obvious? What if attention itself was a form of reverence? The smallest life was treated as worthy of karmic concern. This idea pushes moral imagination to its limit. In Jain thought especially, living beings are not valued only by size, intelligence, usefulness, or similarity to humans. Tiny organisms matter because life itself is spiritually significant. That changes the meaning of harm. It is no longer only a problem when the victim can protest or when society notices. The unseen and the easily crushed also enter the moral field. Some people find this radical because it overturns the usual hierarchy of importance. Human convenience is not allowed to be the only measure. In karmic terms, harming small life can still burden the soul because the issue is not public drama. The issue is violence itself. This does not make ordinary living simple. It makes it morally charged. The tradition responds with restraint, discipline, and awareness. The lesson is not that perfect harmlessness is easy. The lesson is that care may need to reach far beyond what we usually see. Karma made daily conduct more important than grand belief. Belief can be spoken easily. Conduct reveals what has actually been understood. Karma shifts attention from what a person claims to what they enact. A person may speak about compassion while treating people harshly. They may praise truth while living through convenient deception. They may admire wisdom while feeding the same old habits. Karma does not deny the importance of belief, but it refuses to let belief replace action. This makes the teaching very hard to fake. The real test happens in daily conduct. How does someone handle power? How do they speak when annoyed? What do they do when nobody is watching? Some people find this refreshing because it cuts through spiritual theater. The universe, in the karmic view, is not persuaded by slogans. The pattern is built through behavior. Grand ideas may inspire, but repeated action forms the path. A simple deed may reveal more than 1,000 impressive words. It asks what kind of world your actions encourage. Every action is a small vote for a certain kind of reality. Speak with cruelty, and you help make cruelty more normal. Tell the truth, and you strengthen a world where truth can be trusted. Offer help, and you encourage a field where help becomes thinkable. This is karma as participation. It does not treat the individual as sealed off from everything else. It asks what your conduct invites others to become. Some people find this deeply practical because it moves morality beyond private purity. The issue is not only whether you feel good about yourself. The issue is what your actions teach the surrounding world. A leader trains a culture. A parent trains a home. A friend trains a friendship. Even a stranger can change the tone of a moment. Karma makes influence unavoidable. You are always contributing to a pattern. The question is whether that pattern makes life clearer, kinder, braver, or more confused. Nobody escapes influence because every action enters relationship. Even actions done in private can move outward through the person they shape. A hidden habit affects mood. Mood affects speech. Speech affects trust. Trust affects what others risk saying or doing. This is how influence travels. Karma treats relationship as the field where consequence becomes visible. No one lives as an isolated unit. We are constantly affecting and being affected by others. Some people find this unsettling because it removes the fantasy of private moral life. The self is porous. What is cultivated inside eventually touches the world. A person who secretly feeds bitterness may bring suspicion into innocent conversations. A person who practices steadiness may become a refuge without announcing it. The influence may be small, but it is real. Karma asks us to take that reality seriously. Every action enters the web of relation through character, tone, habit, and response. We do not escape influence by pretending not to have it. The teaching becomes transformative when it removes excuses. Karma is not meant to crush people with guilt. It is meant to wake them from avoidance. Excuses are powerful because they protect patterns from examination. A person says they had no choice, that everyone does it, that the past made them this way, or that one small action does not matter. Sometimes circumstances are genuinely difficult. Karma does not deny that. But it asks whether the excuse has become a hiding place. Transformation begins when a person stops outsourcing responsibility for every response. This can be a fierce teaching. It says that freedom grows where honesty enters. Some people find it uncomfortable because it takes away the pleasure of blaming everything else. Yet that discomfort can be a doorway. If my actions matter, then my next action matters too. The same teaching that removes excuses also returns power. It says the pattern may be old, but the next choice is still alive. Its mystery is that justice may be larger than one lifetime. Human beings often want justice to be visible, immediate, and complete. Karma opens a stranger possibility. What if consequence unfolds across a span too wide for ordinary memory? What if a single life is not enough to understand the balance of action and result? This idea does not solve every moral problem, and it should never be used carelessly against the suffering. But as a mystery, it is immense. It suggests that existence may contain a moral continuity beyond birth and death. Some people are drawn to this because it challenges the flatness of a one-life account. It asks whether the story of a soul or a stream of consciousness might be longer than the body's current chapter. In that vision, justice is not always absent when it is unseen. It may be unfolding on a scale that human impatience cannot measure. The idea is unsettling, but it has held imaginations for thousands of years. True karma is less about reward than awakening. The deepest teaching does not ask people to behave well merely to collect present outcomes. That is still a bargain. It may be useful at first, but it is not the end. The mature aim is awakening. Action becomes a mirror that reveals attachment, fear, craving, compassion, courage, and ignorance. Consequence becomes a teacher rather than a prize machine. A person begins to see how suffering is made. They see how freedom is strengthened. They understand that moral life is not separate from consciousness. Some people miss this because they focus only on what karma might bring them. Will I be rewarded? Will they be punished? The higher question is different. What is this action making clear? What is it training in me? What does it reveal about how I think life works? Karma becomes profound when it stops being a system of cosmic transaction and becomes a path towards seeing reality without self-deception. Each moment offers a chance to stop feeding old patterns. The past may be powerful, but it needs present participation to keep repeating in the same way. This is one of the most hopeful karmic insights. A pattern survives because it is fed. It is fed by attention, reaction, justification, and habit. When the next familiar moment arrives, the person may feel the old pull. That pull is real, but it is not the whole truth. There is also a chance to stop feeding it. The old anger can be noticed without being obeyed. The old fear can be felt without becoming policy. The old craving can rise without controlling the hand. Some people find this idea life-changing because it gives dignity to small victories. You may not end a pattern forever in one moment, but you can refuse to strengthen it now. That refusal matters. Karma is not only the weight of what has been done, it is the possibility of what is no longer continued. The final lesson is simple, but never small. Every choice matters. Not because every choice creates a dramatic event, and not because life is a simple scoreboard, but because action shapes the field in which we live. It shapes the mind that chooses, the people who receive the choice, and the future that grows from it. Karma asks us to become awake to that fact. The teaching can be mystical, psychological, ethical, practical, ancient, and strangely modern. Yet at its core, it returns to the same demand. Pay attention to what you are doing. Pay attention to why you are doing it. Pay attention to what your actions train. Some people search for hidden laws in distant places, but karma places the hidden law directly inside daily conduct. The mystery is not only beyond the stars or beyond death. It is also in the next word, the next motive, the next response. A life is not built all at once. It is built through consequence. And so, we come to the end of this journey through karma. We have seen that karma is far more than the simple idea of instant payback. It is action. It is intention. It is the slow shaping of a life through choices that may seem small at the time. It asks us to notice the motives beneath our behavior, the habits we repeat, and the unseen consequences that may continue long after a moment has passed. Across these teachings, karma has appeared as a law of cause and effect, a path of self-knowledge, a mirror for the mind, and a reminder that no action is entirely isolated. A word can travel further than we expect. A pause can prevent a chain from continuing. A generous act can change the giver before it changes the world. Even the quietest decision can become part of the person we are becoming. And now, let the thinking begin to soften. Let the ideas settle like dust after a long road. You do not need to solve the mystery tonight. You do not need to measure every choice you have ever made. For now, it is enough to rest in the simple understanding that the next moment is still open. Let your shoulders release. Let your breathing find its own slower rhythm. Allow the day to loosen its hold and let your mind drift away from effort. If you enjoyed this curious journey, you are welcome to like, subscribe, or leave a thought below. It helps others find their way here too. And if you happen to still be awake, there is another video waiting on the screen, ready to carry you a little further. But for now, let the lesson become quiet inside you. Let the night take over. Let everything be just as it is. Sleep well, and good night.